What if I told you that the Bible didn't just speak about faith, sin, and salvation, but about global politics, modern alliances, and the very nation of Iran? Yes, the scriptures, written thousands of years ago, describe events unfolding right now. In this video, we are going to uncover one of the most shocking and relevant prophecies in the Bible, a prophecy that involves Iran, Israel, Russia, Turkey, and a coming war that could change everything. We're not talking about vague metaphors or poetic symbolism. We're talking about names, places, alliances, written clearly in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38. This is a prophecy with stunning accuracy, unfolding in headlines today. But this isn't just about ancient scripture or political conflict. It's about purpose. It's about destiny. It's about the God who writes history in advance to prove that He is who He says He is. So stay with me, not just for curiosity, not just for information, but because this may be the most important prophecy you hear in your lifetime. What you're about to watch is the first part of a 5-part journey. Each part dives deeper into the prophecy, the players, the timeline, and most importantly, the divine plan. So I invite you, watch until the end, let the prophecy speak, and decide for yourself what it means for your future. Let's begin where it all starts, with the prophet Ezekiel. Around 2,600 years ago, Ezekiel was a priest and prophet living in exile in Babylon. In chapters 38 and 39 of his writings, he records a vision, a vivid, terrifying account of a massive military alliance rising up against the nation of Israel. He names names. He gives directions. He describes a coalition led by a figure known as Gog from the land of Magog. And among the nations listed? Persia. That's right, Persia, known today as the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, let's pause for a moment. This isn't just an ancient name with no modern meaning. Persia changed its official name to Iran in 1935. The cultural and ethnic connection remains undeniable. In Ezekiel's vision, Persia is joined by other nations, Put, Cush, Gomer, Togarmah, all regions that, when mapped today, fall into modern-day nations like Libya, Sudan, Turkey, and others. But one thing stands out. The coalition is hostile, unified, and marching toward one goal, the destruction of Israel. Let that sink in. A coalition of nations, including Iran, organizing a military campaign to wipe Israel off the map. Sound familiar? Now, before you think, maybe this already happened, think again. This prophecy does not match any event in ancient history. It speaks of a time when Israel is living securely in its land, a time when they've returned from exile, a time when they feel at peace. That didn't describe Israel during Ezekiel's time. It didn't describe Israel in the centuries that followed. But it does describe Israel today. After nearly 2,000 years of exile, the Jewish people returned to their homeland in 1948. Against all odds, the nation of Israel was reborn. And since then, they've established one of the most technologically advanced, militarily powerful, and diplomatically active nations in the world. And yet, they are still surrounded by enemies. Enemies that match the prophecy. Enemies like Iran. And here's where it gets even more chilling. Iran hasn't been shy about its intentions. Its leaders have publicly declared the desire to destroy Israel, calling it a cancerous tumor that must be erased. They've funneled weapons and funds to terrorist organizations committed to Israel's destruction. And they've invested heavily in military technology, including nuclear research. This isn't theory. This is reality. And Ezekiel saw it coming 2,600 years ago. But what's the purpose of this prophecy? Why would God reveal such violent, world-shaking events? Because prophecy isn't just about prediction. It's about preparation. It's about proof. When God tells us something in advance and it comes to pass, we are left with a choice. Dismiss it as coincidence, or recognize it as divine. And that brings us to the next piece of the prophecy, the leader of the invasion. Who is Gog? Where is Magog? And how do Russia and Turkey play into this? Part 2. The Rise of Gog and the Shadow of Magog. We ended Part 1 with a question. Who is Gog? Where is Magog? And what does this have to do with Russia and Turkey today? Let's start with what Ezekiel actually says. In Ezekiel 38:2, God speaks directly to the prophet. Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him. Gog is not the name of a country. Gog is a title, possibly a military or political leader, a figure who will rise in the land of Magog. So where is Magog? Ancient historians like Josephus identified Magog as the land inhabited by the Scythians, a nomadic people who lived in what is now southern Russia, around the Caspian and Black Seas. Meshech and Tubal were also regions associated with Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey. In other words, Ezekiel's prophecy points toward a future alliance, spearheaded by a northern power, one that commands influence over the region of Russia and Turkey. Let's take a step back and consider the geopolitical reality of our time. Russia has positioned itself as a global power broker in the Middle East. Its influence in Syria, its alliances with Iran and Turkey, and its increasingly antagonistic stance toward Western nations. All of it aligns with the description of Magog. Turkey, once a secular republic, has in recent years moved toward religious nationalism under President Erdogan. Turkey is now actively involved in regional conflicts, increasingly anti-Israel, and building ties with Russia and Iran. So here we have it, a northern leader, Gog, rising from a land historically identified as Magog, Russia, building ties with Meshech and Tubal, Turkey, and forming a coalition with Persia, Iran, to invade Israel. This isn't speculation. This isn't sensationalism. This is the framework Ezekiel described, and it is forming in our lifetime. But there's more. Ezekiel 38 doesn't just tell us who, it tells us how. This coalition doesn't sneak into Israel. They come openly, brazenly, confidently. Ezekiel 38:10-12 says that Gog will devise an evil plan. I will invade a land of unwalled villages, a peaceful and unsuspecting people, to seize spoil and carry off plunder. This tells us that Israel will be living in a moment of apparent peace and confidence, a time when borders feel secure, a time when war seems unlikely. And yet that is when Gog strikes. The prophecy also describes the massive scale of the invasion. Ezekiel speaks of armies riding out like a storm, covering the land like a cloud. This is not a border skirmish. This is a global crisis. Now think about the strategic positioning of Russia, Iran, and Turkey today. Joint military exercises, shared intelligence, arms deals, anti-Israel rhetoric. The pieces are already on the board, and yet there's still one more question to answer. Why would these nations, with different cultures, languages, and histories, unite for this cause? What would bring them together in a single moment of destruction? In Part 3, we'll explore the deeper motivations behind this alliance. The spiritual forces at work, the ancient hatred reawakening in our time. And most importantly, we'll begin to see how God plans not just to confront them, but to reveal His glory through it. So why do they come? What drives this unholy alliance, nations with vastly different backgrounds, to unite for one coordinated assault against Israel? The answer lies beyond politics, beyond power, beyond oil or territory. It lies in the realm of the spiritual. The Bible tells us that behind the kingdoms of men, there are spiritual forces at work, principalities, powers, rulers of darkness. What Ezekiel saw wasn't just a military campaign. He saw a demonic strategy. This is a war orchestrated not just by men, but by the enemy of God himself, Satan. who has always sought to destroy what God has chosen. And God has chosen Israel. From the beginning of time, the enemy has targeted the people through whom God chose to reveal himself. He stirred Pharaoh to enslave them. He moved nations to exile them. He manipulated rulers to massacre them. And today, he still schemes. But why such hatred toward Israel? Because Israel is the visible evidence that God keeps his promises. Every time you see Israel on the map, a nation restored after centuries of dispersion, you're looking at a miracle of prophecy fulfilled. And that infuriates the enemy. So he provokes nations to hate Israel. He fuels lies, conspiracies, ideologies. He ignites extremism under the banner of religion and nationalism. And through that spiritual hatred, he aligns the powers of the world for one final, catastrophic strike. But God is not surprised. In fact, he tells us why he allows it to happen. Ezekiel 38:16 says, "You will come up against my people Israel. It will happen in the latter days that I will bring you against my land so that the nations may know me when I am sanctified in you, O Gog, before their eyes." God allows the enemy to rise, not so that Israel will be destroyed, but so that he will be glorified. Let that sink in. This invasion, this terrifying moment in human history, is not the end of Israel. It is the stage for the revelation of God's power, a trap set by heaven to humble the nations, to prove, once again, that no weapon formed against God's people will prosper. In fact, Ezekiel goes even further. He describes exactly how God will respond. And what comes next is unlike anything the world has seen. Massive earthquakes, natural disasters, panic and confusion among the armies, friendly fire, divine fire. God fights for Israel, not just with strategy, but with supernatural force. This isn't just about politics or prophecy. This is about God writing history with his own hand. But before we jump to the divine intervention, we need to look closer at the condition of Israel itself. How could they be caught off guard? Why would a nation so advanced, so alert, let their enemies come so close? In Part 4, we'll uncover the surprising spiritual state of Israel before the invasion. A state of comfort, a false sense of peace, a dangerous complacency. And it's not just about Israel, it's about us. Because what happens to Israel is a reflection of what's happening in the world. Stay with me. You're about to see how prophecy becomes personal. Before the fire falls from heaven, before the armies scatter in confusion, before the world gasps at the hand of God, Israel is at peace. But it's not the kind of peace that comes from God. It's the peace that comes from comfort, from prosperity, from believing that danger is far away. Ezekiel 38:11 describes the nation as a land of unwalled villages, a peaceful and unsuspecting people. That's a striking image, because throughout history, Israel has never truly been without enemies. They've always lived surrounded by tension. So how do we make sense of this? Some scholars believe this refers to a future political agreement, a treaty, a false sense of security forged by diplomacy and human effort. Others believe it points to a spiritual complacency, a moment when the people of Israel and perhaps the world believe that major conflict is behind us. Peace talks, economic deals, strategic alliances, all giving the illusion that the danger is gone. But prophecy tells a different story. That's the danger of comfort. It lulls us to sleep. It makes us vulnerable. It convinces us we are safe just before the storm hits. And this isn't just about Israel. It's about the entire world. We live in a time of progress, innovation, technology, and wealth. We scroll through our phones while global tensions escalate. We binge entertainment while nations prepare for war. It's easy to think we're in control, that science, politics, and economics will solve everything. But the Bible warns, when people say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them. The world will not be ready, and neither will Israel, because the invasion described by Ezekiel doesn't happen in the midst of chaos. It happens during calm. But that calm will shatter. In a moment, the coalition strikes. Armies surge across the borders. The people of Israel cry out. And then God moves. This is where everything changes. Because in Ezekiel 38 and 39, we move from human plans to divine power. God doesn't just watch. He acts. He unleashes natural disasters. He sends confusion among the invaders. He rains fire from the sky. And the world sees it. Not just Israel, not just Gog, not just the coalition, but every nation watching. They see the unmistakable hand of God. This is the moment where history and heaven collide. But we're not there yet. First, we must understand the nature of God's response. Is it wrath? Is it justice? Is it mercy? In Part 5, we'll explore the final act of the prophecy, the intervention from heaven, the global awakening, and the message that God delivers to every living soul. The war may be physical, but the purpose is eternal. The armies are in place, the skies begin to darken, and the ground beneath the invaders trembles. Ezekiel 38 and 39 paint a picture of supernatural intervention unlike anything else in Scripture. This isn't a conventional war. This is God stepping directly into the affairs of men. The prophecy describes a massive earthquake, so powerful that mountains collapse and every creature feels it. Panic erupts among the enemy ranks. Confusion sets in. They begin turning on each other, swords drawn in chaos. Then fire and hail. God sends a storm from heaven, one that consumes the armies invading Israel, and not just with weather, with judgment. Why? Why such a powerful response? Because God is making a statement, not just to Israel, not just to Gog and the nations, but to the entire world. Ezekiel 39:7 says, "I will make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and the nations shall know that I am the Lord, the Holy One in Israel." This is not random wrath. It is a divine revelation. God is showing His power, His sovereignty, His justice, and yes, even His mercy. Because through this moment of terror, the world is given a glimpse of something greater, a God who defends, a God who fulfills His promises, a God who will not be mocked. And the outcome is stunning. Israel, once complacent, is awakened. The nations, once arrogant, are silenced. And the world, once skeptical, is confronted with truth. This is the purpose of prophecy, not just to predict, but to prepare, to warn, to call hearts back to God. Because the same God who defends Israel is the God who calls you. He's not just Lord of nations, He's the shepherd of souls, and He's inviting you today to turn your eyes to Him. You've watched this prophecy unfold. You've seen how Scripture speaks to our moment in history. Now the question is, what will you do with it? Will you walk away, or will you lean in? Will you dismiss it, or will you dig deeper? Because prophecy doesn't end in fear, it ends in faith. And if you've come this far in this video, thank you. We created this with one purpose: to open eyes, stir hearts, and point to the truth that never changes. If this message impacted you, we invite you to join us. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let us know in the comments what stood out to you most. Your voice matters, your thoughts matter, and together we can bring biblical truth to more people hungry for answers. This is Faith Stories, where the Bible comes alive, and the message is eternal.